Stephen A. Smith is yet another African-American man who said some things to help Donald Trump get reelected. I'm not suggesting that Stephen A. intends to help Donald Trump get reelected. In fact, he said that he has voted Democratic for most of his life. But there's no debate. The things that he said will help the Trump campaign, and those things were wrong. They were incorrect. And I'm going to show you how and why. Stay with me. Hello, everybody. I am Attorney Augustus Corbett, one half of the Defiant Lawyers. And each and every week, we bring you at least one legal analysis of some story trending regarding politics, policies, personalities, or pop culture to empower you with the information you need to defy this unjust legal system and to nullify systemic racism. If that interests you, and I certainly hope it does, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell. And share this video. We really appreciate all of your help, everything that you do to help this channel get out the information that we need to empower the African American community. So yes, Stephen A. Smith is yet another African American man who is out here saying things that Trump can use to get reelected. Now, I'm not suggesting that Stephen A. Smith is working with or working for the Trump campaign or his surrogates or anything like that. But sometimes our loose, reckless words can help people that we don't intend to help. What's the old saying? Loose lips sink ships. So I got a few things that I want to say about what Stephen A. said on the Sean Hannity Fox show. Got a few things I want to talk to you about, want to set a few things straight. All right? So that's what we're going to do. As always, please go to Amazon and grab a copy of my book, Education in Justice. If you have an African American male or female student in a public school system, this book will really help you help them. So go, please, and get your copy today. And after you read it, please go to Amazon and write me a review. Thank you. I appreciate it so much. All right, so let's go to another screen. Stephen A. Smith is wrong about Trump and the Democrats. Yes, he is. Now, what exactly did Stephen A. say? I'm not going to play the video because I don't want to get a copyright strike, but I have the transcript. And here's what he said. Quote, I'm looking at the Democrats right now. And again, primarily, I have voted Democrat throughout my life, but I'm utterly disgusted with what I'm seeing because it seems to me that they're trying to use the law in the courts. They're clearly politicized this thing with Donald Trump because they can't come up with a strategy to offset the momentum. All right, now you see what he said? And the part of this that I disagree with most is where he says they're trying to use the law and the courts. They're clearly politicized this thing with Donald Trump because they can't come up with a strategy to offset the momentum. Now, I'm going to parse what Stephen A. said from a legal perspective because I am an attorney. I have an emotional reaction that I could give you, but that's not worth very much. I want to give you a legal reaction to what Stephen A. said. So my summation of this statement from Stephen A. is the Democrats are allegedly treating Trump unjustly by prosecuting him for political reasons. That is how I would sum up what Stephen A. is saying. He is saying the Democrats are treating Trump unjustly by prosecuting Trump for political reasons. Hey everyone, I am Attorney Augustus Corbett, one half of the Defiant Lawyers. Recently, I took a look at our analytics and I noticed something shocking. Many of you watch our videos and I believe you enjoy them, but you haven't subscribed yet. What are you waiting for? Again, I was shocked because I know our content is empowering and informative. Plus, our 2024 goal is to have 150,000 subscribers before the end of the year. Please help us by hitting that subscribe button, especially you young folks. We particularly want to increase our number of young subscribers. Thanks for all your continued support. We appreciate it very much. So he also said, but I got to tell you something, as much as people may have been abhorred by Donald Trump's statement weeks ago, talking about how black folks, he's hearing that black folks find him relatable because what he's going through is similar to what black Americans have gone through. Not true. He wasn't lying. He was telling the truth. When you see the law enforcement, the court system, and everything else being exercised against him, it is something that black folks throughout this nation can relate to with some of our historic iconic figures. We've seen that happen throughout society, no matter what. My summation of what Stephen A. means here is we blacks can relate to the alleged injustice Democrats are imposing on Trump. Well, speaking anecdotally, speaking for myself and for my wife, because we discussed this, we don't relate to Donald Trump and any injustice that he's out here claiming that he's experiencing. We can speak for us. We are two African Americans who do not relate to Donald Trump's claims that he's being treated unjustly. All right, now, I also want to read you a quote from Bryan Stevenson. I believe his quote will put all of this in context. Bryan Stevenson founded and he directs a nonprofit organization called the Equal Justice Initiative. And anyone who knows Brother Stevenson knows that he is doing some tremendous work as an attorney. He has been in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. He has saved people's lives who were on death row. He is the real deal. And he says some very powerful things. In fact, I want to recommend his book, Just Mercy. Just Mercy. Get a copy of Bryan Stevenson's book from Amazon, Just Mercy, and support what he's doing with his nonprofit organization or nonprofit law firm. All right, so here's what he said. Quote, "We have to reform a system of criminal justice that continues to treat people better if they are rich and guilty than if they are poor and innocent." Now listen to that. He says, our criminal justice system, or you might call it criminal injustice system, treats those who are rich and guilty better than it does those that are poor and innocent. And as a practitioner, as a practicing attorney, I can tell you that Bryan is absolutely correct. He goes on to say a system that denies the poor the legal help they need, that makes wealth and status more important than culpability, must be changed. So a system that prioritizes wealth above all else is not a just system. It's not fair. So when Stephen A. cries a bowl of tears for Donald Trump, a rich white man, and says that we black people can relate to a rich white man being mistreated by the legal system, remember Bryan Stevenson's words. He says that our legal system treats the rich and guilty better than it does the poor and innocent. and we must change that. So remember that from a practitioner. Bryant Stevenson, like myself, is one who practices law. So we ought to know, right? We should know. Now, so let me address this thing that Stephen A. said that I summarized in the following way. The Democrats are allegedly treating Trump unjustly by prosecuting him for political reasons. So he's essentially saying that Joe Biden and the Democrats have directed the prosecutors in all of Trump's cases to go after Trump. That's essentially what he is saying. Now, let me point out several things here from a legal perspective. First, a grand jury of New York citizens indicted Trump, not Alvin Bragg, not Joe Biden, not Kamala Harris, not anyone associated with the DNC. There are 12 people typically in a grand jury, and they voted. And in most jurisdictions, they have to vote unanimously to indict someone. So they looked at the evidence that Alvin Bragg had, the district attorney of Manhattan, and they felt like it met the standard of probable cause to return an indictment. That was not Alvin Bragg's doing. He presented the evidence. And I don't know how they do it in New York, but here in Texas, when we know our clients their cases are going to be presented to a grand jury, we have the opportunity here to submit a package that explains why the grand jury should, what we call, no-bill the case. We have that opportunity. I don't know if Trump's lawyers had that opportunity or not. I'm not sure. But if they did, then the grand jury heard from them as well. But the point is, the grand jury returned the indictment, not Alvin Bragg. That was not his doing. So when Stephen A. suggests that the Democrats are allegedly treating Trump unjustly by prosecuting him for political reasons, then Stephen A. is joining the chorus of GOP folks who are essentially calling our legal system corrupt. Not only is Biden corrupt, according to these folks, not only is Kamala corrupt, not only is Alvin Bragg corrupt, but also all of his prosecutors and all of the people who made up the grand jury. The whole system, in other words, is against him. Now, we know that's what he's out saying every day in the news. But it's not true. It's not true. So, a grand jury indicted him, not Alvin Bragg, not Joe Biden, not Kamala Harris. And the grand jury only needs probable cause. Now, let me see if I can explain probable cause to you. It's a legal standard. In the law, we have certain legal standards that we must be able to satisfy before we can take a case further. So at the bottom of that list is something we call reasonable suspicion. Then just a little bit above that is probable cause. These are very low standards. Then a preponderance of the evidence, and then clear and convincing evidence. And at the top of that standard is beyond a reasonable doubt. All the grand jury needs is probable cause, which basically means that the person that is being considered for an indictment probably did what he's accused of doing based on the facts and the circumstances. So the prosecutors presented all the facts and the evidence that they had, that they were able to collect in this case, this so-called hush money case. And the grand jury looked at that evidence and said, okay, this at least meets the probable cause standard. Again, it's a very low standard, a very low standard. Now, once a person is indicted and the case goes now to the next level, the standard increases all the way to the very top, which is beyond a reasonable doubt. Now watch this. Let me just tell you this. The prosecutor has the burden of proving Trump's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, and all the jurors must agree that Trump is guilty after they hear all the evidence. The defense, Trump's defense lawyers, all they need to do is convince one of those jurors that Trump did not do what the state is alleging. Just one. All they have to do is sow reasonable doubt with one of those jurors. And keep in mind, and this is really, really important, Trump is presumed innocent. He enjoys the presumption of innocence right now. So under the law, Trump is presumed innocent. He hasn't been convicted of anything. Alvin Bragg, as I just said, he and his team of prosecutors must present creditable evidence to convince all the members of the regular jury, not talking about the grand jury now, the regular, what we call petite jury, they will need more than probable cause. They need beyond a reasonable doubt. And if one of them has that reasonable doubt, then Trump will walk. Now, one of the things that I noticed is they picked a jury in what I would consider to be a pretty short time. And that concerns me as to whether or not they had adequate time to really vet all those folks that are now on the jury. Because again, Trump's team just need one of them, one sleeper juror who has been hearing all the stuff that Trump has been out there saying. And they are just of the opinion that he's not guilty, and they refuse, despite whatever the facts and the circumstances are, whatever the evidence is, whatever witnesses say, whatever whomever says, or whatever the prosecutors say. All they need is one of those people to say, nope, I am not finding Trump guilty. So, the system here gives a lot, or put it this way, places a huge burden on the state. So the state, Alvin Bragg, has a huge burden here. And Trump is a former president, has a lot of people who support him. He's from New York, right? So don't cry a bowl full of tears for Trump. He's in good shape. He has a lot of money. He has a lot of lawyers, a lot of investigators, okay? He has the prestige of having been the president of this country. Trump is all right. I don't know why Stephen A. is so concerned about Trump. All right, let's move on. Stephen A. is essentially calling Alvin Bragg and his office corrupt without putting forth any evidence of their corruption. So when he says the Democrats are mistreating Trump by prosecuting him because of pressure from the Democrats, then he's saying that Alvin Bragg is a corrupt man. He's saying that Alvin Bragg is a dishonest man who lacks integrity. Because that is the only reason why Alvin Bragg would bring a case against Trump if Bragg did not have or does not have the requisite evidence in his own mind. And if you recall, Mr. Bragg refused to bring the charges when two of his senior prosecutors wanted the charges brought much sooner than Mr. Bragg decided to bring them. In fact, I believe they quit, and one of them wrote a book. So Mr. Bragg was very judicious, thoughtful, pensive, and took his sweet time in deciding whether he had the evidence needed to prosecute Trump. He obviously knew this is the biggest thing he was doing in his career. This could perhaps make or break him. So I'm sure he and his family took all the time they needed to pray, to counsel with people, so forth and so on. So for Stephen A. to suggest that Mr. Bragg buckled under the pressure of the Democrats And I don't know Mr. Bragg's politics. I don't know if he's a Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, libertarian, independent. I have no idea about that. I don't know if Stephen A. knows. Maybe he is a Democrat. I don't know. But I'm not going to make that assumption. And whether Democrat or not, no one should just jump to the conclusion that Mr. Bragg and his office are corrupt. As a matter of fact, several weeks ago, Trump's lawyers got in trouble for suggesting that the prosecutors were corrupt and even sort of implied that even the judge is corrupt. And of course, Trump has been out there attacking the judge. So I think that's extraordinary to call Mr. Bragg essentially corrupt without having any evidence or presenting any evidence of his corruption. He was vetted by the citizens of Manhattan, and they found nothing untoward in his background, and they gave him the job of district attorney. If there was some corruption there, I am certain, as the first African American to serve in that position, it would have come out. All right? And when Stephen A. said the case against Trump is weak, he must be saying one or both of two things. So first, he's saying the evidence is weak. He must be saying the evidence is weak. But he hasn't seen the evidence. So his opinion is uninformed. He hasn't seen any evidence. The evidence has not been presented yet. They just finished picking a jury. I believe Monday they will have opening statements, and then the state will get the opportunity to present its case in chief. It will present its evidence. So right now, only the prosecutors, law enforcement, investigators, the folks who are part of the prosecutorial team know what the evidence is. So I don't know how Stephen A. is able to say the case is weak. Well, I tell you why he says that. Because he's not a practitioner. He's not a lawyer. Right? He's not a lawyer, so he will make that sort of statement. That's the kind of statement that a layperson makes. I would never make that kind of statement because I have tried many cases and I know that you really don't know what is going to get before the jury, what's admissible, what's inadmissible. You don't know whether or not the evidence is going to be considered weighty by the jury. And, you know, evidence can be direct evidence. It also can be circumstantial evidence. We don't know what kind of evidence Bragg has just yet because he hasn't presented it. So Stephen A.'s opinion that the evidence is weak or the case is weak is uninformed. The only other thing that he could be saying from a legal perspective is that the law that Bragg is using to prosecute Trump is bad law. I mean, what else could he be saying? If he's not saying the evidence is weak, then he must be saying that the law, the New York statute that Bragg is using to prosecute Trump is bad law, should have never been enacted. I mean, what else? Either the issue is with the evidence or with the law. Now, if Stephen A.'s issue is with the law, then he must realize that it was the New York State legislature that enacted the law. It wasn't Alvin Bragg and his prosecutorial team. So if there's an issue with the law, Stephen A., take that up with the New York State legislature. And he's a New York citizen, resident, born and raised. So get involved with the legislature and prevent them or do your part to stop them from passing bad law or to even repeal this law, if that's your issue. But apparently, Alvin Bragg, his team of prosecutors with many, many years of experience, knowing the chance they're taking, the scrutiny that they're going to be under, the pressure threats against their family members, and yet they brought the case. I don't think they would do that on flimsy evidence or bad law. All right? So the second thing is my summation of Stephen A's comments are that blacks can relate to the alleged injustice Democrats are imposing on Trump. I have a big issue with that statement. Now, that's my summation, but that's what I believe Stephen A. is saying, that Trump is being treated unjustly by the Democrats and blacks can relate to it because we have been treated bad by the system. Wow. When I think about what African Americans have experienced in this country versus what Trump and his family have experienced in this country, I see no equivalency. I don't see how any thinking African American person can relate to Donald Trump being prosecuted because a grand jury thought that he committed a crime, or at least they have probable cause to believe he did, when Trump has lived the dream life. His family has lived the dream life. And this just really gets to me. In fact, I did a video. Go watch that video. I'll put it in the descriptions, where I talk about the two justice systems, one for rich white men and another one for everybody else. Go watch that video. And I kind of touch on some of what Stephen A. is suggesting here. So again, he's saying blacks can relate to the alleged, and it's alleged, right? I don't believe it's real, injustice Democrats are imposing on Trump. And for the record, I say it almost every time I'm on the air. I am not a Democrat. I am not a Republican. I am an independent. Let me just say that for the record. So Trump isn't suffering any injustice merely because a grand jury indicted him. The grand jury indicted him, not Alvin Bragg, not the Democrats. So that's not necessarily an injustice. Now, I've represented defendants, Chloe and I, where it was an injustice for the grand jury to indict our clients because they didn't have probable cause. And sometimes we've been able to convince grand juries not to bring an indictment against our clients because, again, the evidence just isn't there. You don't have probable cause. So there are instances where a grand jury can wrongfully, unjustly indict someone. But that's not this. That's not this, based on the little bit that I know about this case. And I'm not even going into the facts of the case, because again, unlike Stephen A., I admittedly don't know what the facts are. I just know the little bit that the media has reported. But the little bit that I have seen in the media certainly would definitely reach the level of probable cause. And that's my professional legal opinion, having dealt with many grand juries over the years. So we explained the grand jury only needed probable cause. So I reject outright Stephen A.'s contention, Trump's contention, and assertion that black folks can relate to Trump because he was indicted by a grand jury and is being held accountable for what he allegedly has done, keeping in mind that he is presumed innocent. Okay, so my background representing criminal defendants. Stephen A. Smith comments are assisting Trump's campaign, perhaps unintentionally. I would think that he's not trying to help Trump's campaign. I'm going to give him that benefit of the doubt. I'm certainly not going to disparage him. But whether intentional or not, for him to sit on Fox News and say the things that he said certainly helps Trump. They do. to say those things on Fox News to those Fox listeners, that is good stuff for Trump, because it says or suggests to African American people, especially black men, that Trump is being persecuted and treated unjustly, like you, black man. So you, black man, should support Trump. Now, I'm not saying that's what Stephen A. is trying to convey, but inadvertently, I'll give him that benefit. That is precisely what he is conveying, that Trump is a political victim of the Democratic Party. Well, first of all, I didn't think that the GOP and conservatives are all about playing the victim card. They are quick to tell African Americans, you're playing the victim card by bringing up or alleging injustices. But Trump does it more than everybody. I mean, he is all about grievances, how he's being mistreated, and how his supporters are being mistreated. Why isn't that victimology? Why is it victimology only if black Americans talk about the 400 years of racial oppression? For us, that's victimology. But when Trump says this stuff, it's okay. All right? It's okay. So whether he wants to or not, his comments are assisting Trump's campaign. Now, Stephen A. is a journalist, and he's a very good journalist and a very successful journalist. I will give him that. I have watched his shows many times. I have enjoyed his shows many times. He is a spirited, articulate, intelligent brother, and he's come up from Queens, New York. He has worked hard. Single mother, I understand. I heard him talk about his father. I don't think he had the best relationship with his dad, so I applaud his come up. That's what I'm saying. So he's a great journalist, but he's not a lawyer. He's entitled to his opinion, but he's not a lawyer. But I've been a criminal defense and civil rights attorney and representing criminal defendants for almost 17 years. I've represented more people than I can literally count. It has been much more than what I can count on my two hands over almost 17 years. And I'm telling you that Stephen A. is flat wrong that Trump's situation is similar to blacks, because Trump's having to go through the court system as a result of a grand jury indicting him. So me, as a political independent, I want to say this too, for the record. I would be the first to say that Trump was being treated unjustly if, in fact, he was being treated unjustly. But I see no evidence of that whatsoever. This man has lived a dream life. No. I saw him sitting at the defense table Friday, I think it was, Thursday. Two lawyers. Two very good, very competent lawyers. Very well paid lawyers, sitting to his right and to his left. And I'm sure there are jury consultants, investigators, other lawyers all around who are in the background helping the defense. That's not a person that most blacks can relate to when they're involved in the criminal justice system. And I'm going to show you why. So again, Trump is presumed innocent. And I've represented, again, too many criminal defendants to count. And most of them were poor African Americans. And a lot of them I represented as a court-appointed attorney. Why is that important? Because unlike Trump, many of my clients were not even able to afford a lawyer. So the court had to appoint them a lawyer, or a public defender would represent them. Unlike Trump, who is able to go into his stash and buy a bunch of lawyers. I'm just showing you there is no relatability here between Trump's status in the criminal justice system and most African American people. As Brian Stevenson said, the system is tilted toward the rich and guilty rather than the poor and innocent. So spare me the tears and the outrage, Stephen A. And his supporters reportedly are helping cover his legal fees. His daughter-in-law is over the RNC. And she has said on the record that nearly all the money that comes in to the Republican Party, she is going to basically make it available and accessible to Donald Trump. How can black folks relate to this? When many of the folks that we represent call us, many of them we have to put on payment plans. We have to oftentimes reduce our fees. Donald Trump has millions of people contributing to his legal defense. And Stephen A. say that black folks can relate to that. And they must go through the system regardless of the inconvenience. My clients, they don't get to whine and get the opportunity to stand in front of the television station and trash the judge and the prosecutors and so forth. So Trump shouldn't get a pass because he's a former president running for office. I'm just telling you the attitude of the court system. The court's attitude is that's his business that he decided to run for office while facing multiple charges. That was his decision. When we're representing people who have criminal charges, the court expects them to put those charges first. Put your charges first. So you may want to delay enrolling in school right now, if that's going to keep you out of court. Or you may want to delay buying XYZ if that's going to prevent you from being able to take care of your legal fees. In other words, your criminal case takes priority. But Trump wants his campaign to take priority. That is not the way the court system works. When you're facing felony charges like that, those judges can be unforgiving oftentimes, especially if you're black. You see Trump getting all kinds of favors. But if you're black, you don't get that, and poor. So let me show you a few things that distinguish the average black defendant from Donald Trump. First of all, the average black defendant is most likely a descendant of slaves. Trump came here with his family as immigrants and did very well. And by the way, discriminated against blacks early in his career. A lot of black defendants' families suffered Jim Crow after slavery ended and still today deal with systemic racism. Trump doesn't deal with systemic racism. Trump's family didn't go through Jim Crow, segregation, sharecropping. His family didn't experience any of that. How, therefore, can we relate to him just having to answer to some charges that a grand jury brought against him? Many grew up in poverty. Trump got $1 million reportedly when he was a kid. I read, was making $250,000 a year when he was 5. And when he became older, I think his father made available to him the family's fortune, which I believe were hundreds of millions of dollars. How can the average black defendant relate to that, Stephen A.? A lot of black defendants attend bad schools and rough neighborhoods, were reared by single parents. are racially profiled by police officers, are overcharged oftentimes by the cops. In other words, the cops could charge them with possession, but instead will charge them with manufacturing. And most black defendants don't show up to court in a limousine with Secret Service protection. How can black people relate to Trump, Stephen A., and Donald Trump? And they aren't former presidents with all the perks, the privileges, the power that comes from having been one of, 45, 46 men, white men mostly, who have sat in the Oval Office behind the Resolute desk on 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue as the most powerful man in the world? How do black defendants relate to that? I'm baffled. Most black defendants have not appointed 3 of the Supreme Court justices. 3. 3 out of 9. 1/3 of those sitting on the court and who will be there for decades, Trump put there. And again, most black defendants weren't given hundreds of millions of dollars to start life. And they don't have white skin. So I find it very difficult to see how black people can relate to all the perks that Trump grew up with and enjoy to this day. Just think about all the mansions he has all over the world, the helicopter he rides around in. I mean, come on. So, in conclusion, why is it important to hold Trump accountable? Why is it important to hold him accountable? Here's why, and that's what this bottoms out to. Stephen A., this bottoms out to the fact that Trump is no regular criminal defendant. He's not like me. He's not like you, Stephen A., and most other people on the planet. He is a former president. He is the leader of a group of people who seem to be hell-bent on bringing our nation down. He has millions upon millions of people who support him regardless of what he does. As he said, he could murder someone on Fifth Avenue and nothing would be done to him. Well, those words are being tested. Those words are being tested. He hasn't murdered anyone, although the argument could be made strongly that there are many, many grieving families today because of his mishandling of COVID-19. And I mean, when I say mishandling, I'm being nice. You could say malfeasance. You could say intentional behavior. And a lot of those people who died, Stephen A., were blacks and Hispanics. How can we relate to that? You tell me. So he is no regular criminal defendant. He is a threat to our democratic republic. He is a threat to our democratic republic. And let me explain what a democratic republic is. A lot of people say that our nation is a democracy. We use that word rather loosely. But it's not really a democracy. It's a democratic republic. Now, democratic, so we see the word that is similar to democracy is in what type of government we have here. And demos, which is the Greek prefix there for democratic or democracy, means people. People ruled. So that's what you think of when you think of a democracy, a form of government that people rule, the majority. But let me tell you something. The majority can get it wrong, especially against minorities. The majority enacted slave laws, black code laws that place African American people in the position of chattel property. So a democracy can be rather scary if you're in the minority. So that's where the republic part comes in. Because a republic, and notice the word public is in republic, which also means people. But the republic part tells us that the democratic part has checks and balances. So a democratic republic is, yes, people ruled, but there are checks and balances. There is the legislative branch checking the executive branch, and then there's the judicial branch that's checking the legislative branch, and the executive branch checking the legislative branch. And so there are all sorts of checks and balances so that if the majority want to get way off, there are some ways to reel that majority back in. So we have a democratic republic, and that is, especially as an African American, better than a pure democracy. I go through that because Trump is trying to damage those checks and balances, because Trump is interested in him becoming an autocrat, a dictator. I'm telling you, I'm literally warning you that that is the goal and the intention of Donald Trump and his supporters, all for the purpose. Why do they want an autocracy and Trump at the head of it? Because of white fear. They fear a minority nation. They fear minority people becoming the majority of this country, thus destabilizing what they've enjoyed for 400 years, white power, white privilege. So rather than to see a minority country, a country where minorities have the power, they would rather establish an autocrat like Trump. Because he has convinced them that if he's an autocrat like Putin, that he will protect white supremacy. He will make America great again. What do you think that means? That means a time in America where white people's power could not be challenged. So he has pledged to them that he will work to dismantle every civil rights law, everything done in this nation to give black folks some sort of leg up, like DEI, affirmative action, all of that. 14th Amendment. So they would rather set up an autocrat like Trump than to see the country become a minority country, because the demographics have changed over the years, and that scares them so much so that a Russian-styled autocracy would be better in their minds than a democratic republic. Certainly, if minorities are going to be the majority, certainly better than a democracy. So Trump, when he attacks the legal system and the election system and the Department of Justice and the education system, an autocrat has to do that because the autocrat's word has to be final. The autocrat does not want checks and balances on his power. The autocrat want to be able to say this is what it is. So, for example, no more teaching slavery in any school in America. No more money going to HBCUs. The autocrat can say that, and there is nothing anyone can do. And whites would be very happy with that because why? Once again, that is a move that would preserve and protect and secure white supremacy. And I'm just not sure if the Stephen A's, the Charlemagne's, the Tim Scotts, the Jesse Lee Petersons, Clarence Thomases, if they fully understand this. Because what we see here is an ethnic uprising, a white ethnic uprising. None of those people I just mentioned are white. I know some of them think they are, but they're not. So they want to see an autocracy that's based on ethnicity, whiteness. They want to make America great again. So weakening our legal system helps him move closer to becoming an autocrat. That's what this is about. This is not just Trump behaving badly, disparaging the judge, attacking the legal system and all the other systems in America. This is Trump trying to weaken those systems so that he can become this autocratic figure. And there are many, 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 many in the wings waiting for him to be elected so that they can help him implement this fascist, autocratic, white ethno-state. I'm not saying this to scare anyone, but the handwriting is on the wall. It is all over the wall, especially the walls of the Capitol building, literally. Just go to January 6, 2021, and you will see how radicalized many whites are in this country. Now, the next video that I intend to upload is going to be about whether this country is going to see another civil war. That's going to be my next video. So stay tuned for that video. Thank you for tuning in. I am Attorney Augustus Corbett, one half of the Defiant Lawyers. We bring you this kind of content every single week. All right? Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your support. Share, like, comment, subscribe, click the bell. Help us grow the channel. Our goal, 150,000 subscribers in 2024. Help us reach that goal. Thank you. Blessings to you and peace.